been a cornerstone to the community here, both in residential and commercial. It's going to really be missed when it's gone. This room here really, just the smell of it is the same. Yeah. Mr. Bowman, who was our principal at the time, I got to know him a little bit better after the fact as a customer of mine, and he seemed to dwell on it, and I think it was something that he tried to instill in us as students was, whatever you're doing, be dedicated to it. And I think it's, you find that amongst most people here. While I was here, I was a hand-to-mouth household, you know, we didn't have much money. So last year, while I was washing my windows in my shop one morning, I saw Adam the Buff, the jeweler, across the road, and I said, Adam, when I went to Central, I couldn't afford a school ring. Do you happen to have any? Because that was the place we bought them or could buy them. And he said, well, a jeweler never throws anything out, and 15 minutes later he came across with one. And I was able to buy the ring finally, and I was really proud to get the ring, and I have it with me and I carry it all the time.
Such a small school, and we're all very close with each other, so I've made friends that I know I'm going to be friends with for the rest of my life, and so that's been my favorite part of Central. I'm going into international development, so I can work in developing countries to help make a change, and so definitely with Mr. Ramsey especially, he's taught me a lot more about the world that I was never aware of. And so, with him, he's just taught me so much, and it's helped me, know what I'm gonna do now.
I played junior and senior football, and I was on the basketball team. But my main sport was I was in a lot of track and field, especially pole vault, high jump, 100 and the 220. And the last year up in Collingwood is the last year that you could go in 4 events. So I did all the 4 events. I got 2 firsts and 2 seconds. And that was a good memory at that time. That was my last year. We won the regional here, and then Aurora came up and we beat them 20-0. So we thought we were a pretty good team then. So we had to go down to play Welland then in the big game. So we go down there, halfway down it started snowing. Anyways, they only beat us 56-0, so we really didn't want to come back to Barrie, I remember. We used to look forward to the dances here. We used to have some good dances and stuff and that. I was more of a romantic guy, some of the music, I liked rock and roll and that, but I liked a lot of singers like Marty Robbins and Johnny Mathis and songs like that, you know. The equipment's so much better now, and I remember the one year we didn't have enough cleats. I had to wear running shoes that didn't work too good playing football and that. But you know, the helmets are bigger and shoulder pads bigger, and we had smaller little sort of football pants and that, you know, nothing too special. We only had 14 players, and nowadays the teams have about 33 or something. We took 3 juniors with us down to Welland to have 3 extra players, but it was pretty tight with 13, 14 players someday.
We were starving and we're artists. Just kind of happened in the hallway here at Central. We used to throw the acoustic cases out in the hallway, started playing guitar, and put a little sign up, said starving artist, change appreciated. And that's kind of how it all started.
First big gig we had, we were so excited, and our bass player gets suspended the day before. God love him.
It's just, you know, we spend a lot of time together, we've grown old together, you know. Even when Tim moved out to Burke's Falls, we would travel all the way out there just so we could practice and jam with each other and write songs.
Yeah, they brought in the young guns here to improve the look of the band and to bring some class. Yeah.
I remember one time that we had a substitute teacher in our electronics class, and we convinced her to let us go down and grab a coffee and donuts, and she actually bought them for us. It was one of the funniest things we ever had in our electronics class was, yeah, substitute teacher buying us coffee and donuts for the whole class. I worked here in the auditorium working with the stage crew doing sound and lighting for a lot of the events that went on. I was really heavily involved with the music department, with the junior band, senior band, the concert touring band. I was even with the jazz band for a while, and of course our own rock band that we had going here. It was a home, it really was. As you're finding yourself in your young teen years, you get to this big giant place and they call it school. Well, once we got here and you started making friends, and it became like another home away from home where you could be with your friends and do things outside of the house that were, you know, a little bit different, like hang around, play guitar in a hallway, and just chill with friends. It was a home away from home.
I was in the 10th grade, or the 11th grade. I felt young, and I'd transferred over to Barrie Central from another school, so I was new. And I was, at the time, I think I was dating a girl, and I would sing to her, and she was friends with Tim, who had the band. The band was started before I joined, and they needed a singer. So she told Tim that I'd sang, and he came looking for me. So he tracked me down and found me and asked if I'd play some music, and him and I just clicked right off the bat. We both were guitar players. We had similar tastes in music, and we started writing songs, and next thing you know, you're kind of in a band. We started rehearsing a little bit, and next thing you know, they told us that we were playing at a school function in this auditorium in front of the school. And it didn't really sink in until we went to play the gig. So we started getting ready for it, and the day of the gig we showed up to play, and the curtains open, and I was standing on the front, and I'd never sung before in front of a large audience. And again, I was a shy 16-year-old, painfully shy. And all of a sudden the curtains open and your entire student body's sitting in front of you. Hundreds of students that are your peers and your classmates, and that was daunting. So when my legs stopped shaking, I remember trying to sing. And after the first song, we played a song and it went fairly well, and I was so scared, terrified. And then to my amazement, they applauded, which was probably a very nice gesture. And that gave me a little confidence. I thought, wow, they applauded. Okay, we're good now. Tim and I also played in the jazz bands with Graham Hilliam, who's a force to be reckoned with himself. He's a wonderful teacher musician. And the bands were travelers too. Every 2 years they would take a major trip. Tim went to Austria and Germany, I think, in 1997, and I went to California in 1999. And in between then we would compete at Kiwanis festivals and the music festivals locally and in Toronto. So I mean, the school had a bit of a traveling act. I mean, we were constantly on the road and we were always performing. I think that was a very good lesson for us to learn early, that musicians should perform. The difference between this school and I think a lot of others is that we were fortunate to be in a school that had strong programming. The music program was top-notch. The athletics program in Central was top-notch. The languages program, top-notch. It could compete on almost every level, and we always felt proud to be here. With this identity as a Centralite came that sense of pride, knowing that you were from a good school that had a solid reputation and that could back it up. They could always compete and they could perform, and they did often. In 1998, again going back, we did a production of Hair, which is of course is the hippie musical of 1968. So the play itself was extraordinary, but also Neil Maver at the time, our drummer, was the band leader. He was a young teacher, and he was the one running the pit band, of which Tim and I were members. Tim played trombone and I was a guitar player. And because it was all late 60s music, psychedelic music, we were in our element, and we just loved it. To this day, him and I still remember some of those songs, and we can jam them after about 5 or 6 cups of coffee.
Most of the important people in my life I met in this building. I met my wife here. Obviously I met my band members, and most of the lifelong friends I still have I met in this building. I don't know, it was such a close school, I felt, and there was always that feeling of acceptance here. I met my wife in the tech hall. We were sitting down playing the guitars, me and a few of my friends, and I was like, who's that girl that walked by? And a friend of mine, Andrew, was like, oh, I know her, you want to talk to her? I'm like, yeah, for sure. The semi-formal was coming up, and yeah, then we hit it off from there. The people, like everybody I met in here was so friendly, and including my wife, and that was obviously a life-changing experience, but everybody that I crossed paths with in here was just so friendly and accepting, and it's just, that stuck with me, you know, and that's something I took forward in my own life, and I was always, you know, open with everyone, you know. Everywhere I went, tried to make friends.
Even in the basketball team, we made it to the what we would call in those days COSA, Central Ontario Finals, and we played down in Toronto. That's when we were a junior team. Doug Kettle was our coach, and we went down to Hart House in Toronto, University of Toronto, before the game. Well, because of being boys, we had time to put in, so there was a pool, swimming pool, so all the boys went swimming in the pool. Now, at that time I was a non-swimmer, so I didn't swim. And what happened, of course, because they're having so much fun, when they went to play the game, they had no energy. And we actually lost the game, and Mr. Kettle was really upset at us because we didn't play a very good game, because the boys, most of the guys were all exhausted. So
I was in the band at Central, and I played the clarinet. And we went on a trip to Chicago. That was the only trip that I took with the band. But when North opened up, it was in my area where I lived, so I transferred to North. And I became a cheerleader there, but because my boyfriend Paul was at Central, it was a little difficult, because when I was cheering for North, I'd be always wanting Central to win because he was playing on the teams.
when we go up to Collingwood, we'd always stop at Reinhardt's in Stayner, and with the coach's permission, we'd all go in and pick up a gallon jug of cider. And of course, you know, boys will be boys, we drink the cider. Well, when we come back to the school, we'd leave the cider, the gallon jugs, whatever was left, in our lockers. And of course, forgetting that cider eventually ferments into alcohol. And a few times, a couple of the bottles would explode in the lockers and spill everywhere. And of course, the staff, especially the principal, Mr. Bowman, weren't too impressed with that.
His friend Ian, who was in my class actually, so I knew Ian, Paul had said to him, "Who's that good-looking girl coming around the corner?" And so when I was talking to Ian in the class the next day, he told me about his friend Paul that had his eye on me, but he was very, very shy. And there was a Sadie Hawkins dance coming up not long after that, so I asked him to the Sadie Hawkins dance because the girls asked the boys. So that's how we met, and from that day on, we became boyfriend and girlfriend, and then we ended up marrying 7 years later.
T.R. Bowman was very fair, but he was very strict, and he used to walk around the halls with this big, because he's a very tall man, a very slow, ambling kind of thing. And, you know, if you got maybe asked to leave a classroom, you had to go and hide because he wasn't too happy if you were asked to leave a classroom. So we were very conscious of, you know, trying to behave ourselves. But getting back to that, after football practice, because in those days we didn't go to school till 4 o'clock. And so we had to, you know, go to change and so on. By the time you get on the field, it's 4:30, and of course it gets dark. So we would go to the front of the school right out here, and then we would hitchhike home because we were so tired. And Mr. Bowman sometimes would come along because he had a farm down near Stroud. He would pick up some of we football players, and we'd have a little chat on his car as he drove us along and dropped us off somewhere in Allendale. So very, very kind man, even though he was known as a very strict person. So.
Yes, we had Teen Town, and that was fun every Saturday night, and it was a lot of fun. Very loved to dance, both of us loved to dance, and you got to meet all your friends and have fun. It was one of the best memories of my high school days I can remember, really, was Teen Town.
I suppose Central helped my career in that I had some really, really good teachers here, which at the time when you're going through as a student, you know, you don't really appreciate how good they are until you leave the school. And I have some fond memories of some good, really good teachers, and it really helped, I think, helped me a lot going into my career.
The memories, there's so many things associated with your teen years. The music when you danced, I mean today, when you hear a song, it brings back, especially songs bring back memories of things that happened in high school and the dances. And
it's hard to believe, but back then, at the year-end assemblies, they would call you up and they'd give you a certificate for 5 years perfect attendance. And there weren't that many of us who did that, but that's something I'm very proud of. He was the son of Mr. Fisher, our famous music teacher. And he decided that we're going to have a Ed Norton Day. So the word spread quickly. Everyone dressed up like Ed Norton. So we walked in with our jeans and our t-shirts and our vests and our rubber boots. And that lasted about one day, because the announcer would come on that is not tolerated, and you better not be wearing that the next day.
I remember when my dad went here, actually, he told me that what he'd do is tell grade 9s that there's an elevator. So they'd go looking around for it, and he'd sell them elevator passes. So that's something that he would able to get away with back in his day. But yeah, the firing range in the basement, that's a big one.
We all came from the Midhurst area, and because they had just built Barrie North a couple of years before we finished, there were some of us who continued to attend Central, but the bus would pick up kids in Cundles, turn on Grove Street, go to Barrie North and drop off the kids for Barrie North, and then we took a shuttle bus down to Central. And this particular morning, Nancy's 16th birthday, we were sitting right behind the bus driver, and we kind of went past Grove Street, and we could see that he was having difficulty with getting the bus to stop or slow down or do anything. And he turned around and said, Donnie Valley, a former neighbor who's driving the bus, just turned around and said, everybody sit down and hang on. And this bus went all the way from Grove Street, down through the 5 Points, over the railroad tracks which were there, and we went sailing off the boat ramp that Donnie knew was there, and we went out into 30 feet of water, and the bus started to sink. And everybody was yelling and screaming. There were loose books all over the place. And it turned out there were 2 divers. The ice had just gone off the bay, and there were 2 scuba divers had seen this happen, and they went into the water, and they were trying to do something to help the kids. But I think it was Goldie Ferris actually put his jacket over his arm and put out the back window. And everybody got out of the bus through the back. Nobody was killed. Some of us were kind of scratched up and certainly shaken up a bit. But it was just one of those memorable things where you become kind of a near miss. You think, well, I survived this amazing ride. It's about, I think, probably 1.5 kilometers down that hill. And it just accelerated as it went. It wasn't steep, it just gathered speed. And we just went right down past the Barrie Examiner, which is on the right. The train had gone through. The lights were green at the 5 Points, which was also, because we just came barreling right down there and hydroplaned off into the water. I met my future husband when he was in grade 10 and I was in grade 9. And we're coming up to 55 years of being married now.
I was in the 5-year tech program, and I was going to be an architect. There was a number of us going to be engineers and architect, and this was the engineering wing. So we would be down here, and we would head down out here. And I think probably my favorite time is when we would come from here and head out onto the football field. That was where you know, I excelled and had the most fun. Back in the early 60s, believe it or not, we were not allowed. T.R. Bowman was a very strict principal here, and we were not allowed to wear jeans to high school. And we were kind of the forerunners. We had a vote in it. We actually got them through after a couple of years that we were able to wear jeans to high school. In grade 9, I guess I was the class rep. And then I went on, I was the vice president, the first vice president, and I became president of student council. And then we had, I remember some of the clubs, the Key Club, which was a Kiwanis club here. We were members of that. It was a lot of the football team were on that. And you know, try to give back as much. I was very active within the school. So I played on the football team, played on the junior team, and we used to hang around with the senior team. Back when we were a little tougher, you'd have to play both ways. And as a matter of fact, I broke my arm back in, I guess it would be about 68. It actually pretty much ended my hockey career. Had been drafted by the Rangers, and so that I want to thank Bill Davis, was one of the teachers. Matter of fact, on the game, broke my arm. You were going both ways, and he come up to me and he says, "Hoagie," he says, "we need you. Your arm is okay." And he goes, "Crack, crack." Immediately I threw up and passed out, and to this day my arm still doesn't straighten out. So I got this from Central. Helen Spanis. I still remember Helen Spanis in Latin class. There was 3 of us, Jim Burke, Keith Money, and myself were on the football team, sitting in the back of the class talking about the football game that was up. And Helen Spanis was just a little short individual. We had no more interest in Latin than, but anyways, she threw a book at the 3 of us. She comes back today, I don't know what would happen. And she says, "You know what makes me so angry? The 3 of you are probably going to do something in this world and then be successful." And you know, so I think I look back that every time I think back of somebody saying something in Latin, and I still have no interest in Latin today. If you were a rookie or grade 9 coming in, you always got the helmet with no face shields. But I had moved up. I was the quarterback of the junior team when I actually broke my arm. I come in at halftime, and there was guys actually taking my equipment off the bench. They were taking me to the hospital, and they were taking my shoulder pads and taking my good helmet, because that's how bad the equipment was. And Doc Nesbitt, he's famous. Anybody that played on the football team back in those years, remember, we had the worst equipment. I've been drafted by the Rangers. I actually had been drafted by the Philadelphia Phillies in baseball as well. I played baseball in my little farming community of Ivy. And so I started, I still played hockey after that, but my career wasn't much. And I started refereeing as the Legion Minor Hockey here. When I went on to university at McMaster, I actually did high school hockey and men's hockey, paid my way through university, you know, with no student loans, got scouted by the NHL and signed. So it was, being here at Central, it changed my whole life, as a matter of fact. And 23 years in the NHL was a great career, great life, and so it all started right here in Central. I do a lot of dinner speaking, and when I started on with the public speaking, getting up to in front of the whole class, when I was on student council, the first time I was absolutely terrified. By the 3 or 4 years, I was very comfortable with it. So my career in public speaking and being out in the public, I think really helped out. Central has graduated a lot of very interesting, very prominent people, very successful people. I think it goes right back to the days of T.R. Bowman, and he was the strictest principal that I could ever imagine, and the discipline that he had. So there was a lot of discipline in my life that I needed.
Really, the band was my only main function here. I was not involved in sports at all, because the band took a lot of time. I played percussion, which involved everything, mainly bass, drum, and timpani, and sometimes xylophone. I remember one favorite time we played in Massey Hall, which was quite a treat for the band. And I remember the piece we were playing with Panis Angelicus, and I made one note wrong, and WA sure gave me the devil. Because we started out as an orchestra in '39, and WA was quite keen on having an orchestra, but he couldn't get enough strings in Barrie. We have to bring strings up from Toronto, and so in 1940 we switched over to a band, and because the war was on, we ended up being a marching band as well as a concert band. So in those days, I used to play the bass drum and have to carry it over my shoulders as we marched down the main street. I remember one time in Queens Park we were kind of practicing before we started our parade, and I walked right into a tree without knowing it with my drum on. W.A. was a great guy. He primarily taught Canadian history and music were his two specialties, but he was good to the guys. He had a cottage on Rice Lake, and quite often, spring and fall, he would gather up a carload and take us down there to just north of Coburg. And he got a lot of work out of us, but we still had fun at the same time. I would say W.A. was the one that made the huge difference, because I really wasn't into music very much until I got here. I had taken a few piano lessons, but he just drew us in, and he was a good teacher, and he was kind of became a friend almost. 4 of my 5 kids ended up playing in the band as well. My daughter ended up teaching music at North Collegiate for many years. Well, of course, we didn't have a cafeteria even in those days either. Never heard of such a thing. Everybody brought their lunch. And lockers, I think I remember having a big backpack called a knapsack. And I had that even in public school. And you walked to school, there was no buses. Only got my grade 12 here, because I went into the Air Force in spring of '44. And so I went on after my Air Force career, I went to Ryerson to get the rest of my grade 13. 3 maths, physics, chemistry, and English in 3 months was the way it was taught to the ex-service people, and it was a disaster for me. I passed, but I think they just pushed me out the door. I felt, I guess, an obligation, or I guess at that stage in your life, you think it's more of just an interest. What's outside Barrie? Because both my father and my father-in-law had been in the First World War, so it was just something that you expected to do when you got to my age, and it was quite a shock when you get out of Barrie and into the real world. Well, it's been a real focus to my life since I've always lived in Barrie, except for a few years when I was away during the war and in Toronto afterwards. But it's always been here. We come to all the concert series, and Central is a big, key part of my past and still is in the future.
I think respecting that, and in general, most people seem to get along.
I think really the dances and the people that you chummed around with were really the most memorable things about the school.
Great memories of this place, and I'm really happy that I had a chance to come to this school with the great teachers and the many students that I had a lot of fun with.
This was really the beginning of some very interesting careers and some very interesting lives that developed from attending this collegiate at this particular time.
It'll be sad to drive by, which I do most days, and not see the school here, because I understand it's available, and I can't imagine it'll stay as it is. Not be able to take my great-grandkids. My grandkids have seen it, but great-grandkids won't be able to see where I went to school and high school. But at least the fond memories will be there.